No, you should see it. You're okay.
We ready, June? Thank you, Miss June. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Western Weaver Planning Commission meeting. Today is January 9th, 2024. First meeting for a new year. It's now just after 5. I'd like the record to show all Planning Commission members are in attendance with us tonight, and thank you guys for your time and service for being here. If y'all would stand and repeat the pledge with me. All right, thank you for that. First item on our agenda tonight is going to be our approval of the minutes from December 12th. Any questions or concerns from the minutes of December 12th? None. I'll accept a motion to approve those as presented.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do I got a second? Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, Miss June. Wonderful job on those. Next item is going to be voting on our rules of order for the 2024 year. Our rules of order, there's been no changes to these from what we had slated in 2023. Are there any questions or concerns with our rules of order? Okay, seeing none, I will accept a motion on our rules of order.
Chair, I make a motion to accept the rules of order as written.
We got a motion. Do I got a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That'll take us on down to our administrative items. First administrative item is going to be item 3.1 LVS 060823. Consideration and action on a request for final approval of Singletree Acres Subdivision, 25 lots located at 2200 South, 4520 West. Mr. Felix.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for that introduction. I'm working on bringing up some slides. I don't know if it's totally necessary, but what I'll do is I'll just start in with my presentation, and as soon as I can get the connection made, I'll go with that. So, yeah, this is a request for final approval for a subdivision, and this this is a subdivision that consists of 25 residential lots. This property was rezoned to R115 zoning, which allows for the density of 15,000 square foot lots. And this proposal would be constructing a new road in, and that new road in is right next to the new high school, and it will head northward. This proposal includes plans to also have a road stubbing westward, a pathway stubbing to the east, and also a half road on the north edge of the development. And what we have at this point is this also is accompanied by a development agreement, because when it was rezoned, that was part of the rezone. So what staff has done is we've taken time to ensure that this development plan does conform, the street, the cross sections conform to what was required in the development agreement. And we've also made sure that At this stage of approval, they've submitted their civil plans that are already on the second round of review with the county engineer. They've also submitted their final will serve letters from the providers. We also, staff has prepared a report. In it contains the staff's recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the County Commission for final approval of Singletree Acres Subdivision with those 4 conditions stated in the report. I'll just touch on those quickly. That the subdivision conforms to the development agreement. The funds to cover the cost of all remaining subdivision improvements must be held in escrow with the county engineer. The annexation of this property is complete into the Central Weaver Sewer District. And that concludes my presentation on this particular project. Any questions for me?
Commissioners, any questions on this one? Okay, Felix.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. No questions? Any concerns? If not, I'll accept a motion on this item.
Chair, I'll make a motion to pass along a positive recommendation per staff recommendations. 1, all subdivision improvements are designed in accordance with development agreement. 2, at the time of recording, funds to cover the cost of all remaining unfinished subdivision improvements must be held in an escrow account with the county engineering department. 3, an annexation plat bringing land into Central Weaver Sewer Improvement District is completed before the subdivision plat is recorded. 4, civil plans and the subdivision plat have received final approval before the plan is presented before the county commission. And the findings are based on the following. The proposed subdivision conforms to the Western Central Weaver General Plan. Proposed subdivision complies with the applicable county codes. The subdivision conforms to zoning and subdivision ordinances.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I got a second?
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. Commissioner Clance,
Aye.
Commissioner Neville,
Aye.
Commissioner Wickard,
Aye.
Commissioner Favero,
Aye.
Commissioner Andriotti,
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next item is going to be our legislative items. Item 4.1, ZMA 2023-17. This is an application to rezone approximately 134 acres of land at approximately 500 north, 3600 west from A2 to R115. Acting Director Charlie.
You guys okay if I present from here? Or would you rather me be at the lectern?
No, I think you need to stay. I'm just kidding.
I could be wherever you want me to be. Okay. So I've got a few basic slides to run through for you guys on this particular project. It's 147.56 acres of property being proposed to be rezoned to the R115 zone from the A2 zone. A2 zone allows for 40,000 square foot lot sizes. R115 allows for an average of 15,000 square foot lot sizes. In R115, if they do connectivity incentivized development, they get the benefit of the 15,000 square foot average over the entire piece, as opposed to over only the pieces that aren't encumbered by open space and streets. So you might see a little bit more density than you would otherwise be used to. That is different than 15,000 square foot lots, but on average, if you take the entire piece, that's what it turns out to be, as recommended by our general plan. With that in mind, just run you through some of the pictures. You guys got a pretty complete staff report on this. Just a quick announcement. I did amend the staff report earlier today just to be less specific about secondary water. The circumstances I don't think have changed at all, and I think the way it was previously written was accurate. However, things can change between now and when the subdivision comes in. So we just want to know at the rezone level whether or not utility provisions can be accomplished to the subdivision. And I think so far what we know is that they can. How exactly they're done, all that will be worked out when the subdivision comes in. So with that in mind, you see on the map, you've got a existing zone map versus the proposed zone map. The orange is Marriott Slaterville, the pink is Plain City, and the red over here in this area is Far West. So you can see all this green, a little bit of purple there, is all unincorporated Weber County. And the line that divides the colors here is the Weber River. So just give you an idea of where we are. You can see how the proposal is to change from the A2 zone, so that's A2 right there, this kind of darker green, change that to the R115, which on the zone map will be a yellow residential color. This is the applicant's concept plan. It's very small, so I don't expect you to see the tiny detail, but just to give you an overview of what we're looking at here. When we look at a concept plan, we're looking at street layout, street connectivity, pathway layout, pathway connectivity, and open spaces. We don't really care as much where the lot boundaries are going to go because we already have ordinances that govern exactly how those lots can be configured. We just want to know from a basic principles perspective whether or not they've met the connectivity incentivized rules, which looks like they have here. You can see on the left-hand side, that's the applicant's proposal, which the applicant took staff's comments on a previous review and absorbed all of them into their concept. And as staff looked at it one more time, we realized there was a couple more things that we wanted to make note of. Some of the things on the right-hand side, which is staff's review, that we do note is you can see a red arrow on the eastern or on the right-hand side of that kind of points over the river. The intention there is not for the developer to install a road going over the river. The intention there, as written in the report, is for them to reserve a space so that something could potentially go over the river. If at some point in time Marriott Slaterville ever chooses to do that. So right now we're just trying to carve out opportunities. We're not necessarily making requirements. So this applicant, if we do implement this, would be required to put that stub the right of way to the river, but we wouldn't ask them to put any improvements in unless there's a time in the future that Marriott Slaterville wants to pick that up and connect it over to Pioneer Road or something like that. With that in mind, one of the concerns that a member of the public did call in is that there's some potential floodplain challenges, at the very least on the Marriott Slaterville side, if not on this side. And I'll show you a map that shows the floodplain. And so that's certainly something to take into consideration when we're looking at street connections. Here's the future land use map. You guys have probably seen it a few times. And you can see that big red star in the middle is where this property is being proposed in relation to the rest of the unincorporated area. Here's a blow up of the future land use map just to kind of show you in detail what it is that we're looking at here. We've got a number of, you got a gray line, you got a white line, and you got some dashed white lines inside of the property that show potential street layout. The important streets that we want to make sure get installed is the gray dashed line and the white dashed line that crosses it. Gray dashed line is 3600 west, and the white dashed line across the middle here is 700 north. And those are going to be critical streets to have installed to create a street network, a closed street network at some point in the future. As you can see from their concept plan, the lines don't exactly line up, but they weren't ever intended to exactly line up. We didn't look at parcel level detail when we were putting these lines on the map. We were just kind of generally speaking, determining where these lines should about go. So the applicant on 3600, where you see 3600 kind of in this gray line coming around this way, they're proposing to come straight up here. And then this parcel is not their parcel. And so we wouldn't have them install that section of road, but then they'll pick up the road on this side and keep on going. This parcel here is a 5 or so acre parcel that is currently under review for subdivision. I think it's received final subdivision approval on an administrative level. They just haven't platted it yet. And it's a 2-lot subdivision, both lots being fairly large in size. At some point in the future, if those 2 lot owners decide that they want to further develop in accordance with the R115 zone, they could, and we would look to them to install that section of 3600 West. Alternatively, if they wanted to nip the bud right up front, they could probably ask for the applicant to install it right now. and that would be at no cost to them. And I've talked to the applicant about the possibility, if these landowners are comfortable, just installing 3,600 through the property, but those landowners would need to be comfortable, and the applicant would be responsible for negotiating that with them. If I were in their shoes, I would want it installed because in the future they're going to have to build it themselves. If not, if they choose to develop the property further. If they don't choose to develop the property further, the county will have a gap in that 3,600 west, which is probably okay, because unless it spans the river at some point in time, it's really not going a whole lot of places to the north. But once it does span that river, it'll become more and more important for that road to be installed. And so at some point in time, the landowners, the county might go to landowners and ask them to work with us on installing that. So it's a long time down the road. Again, for our purposes here, we're just looking at making sure there are opportunities for these connections to be made at some point when the landowners in the area are comfortable making that happen. This is just a, oh, let me come back here. So the yellow on the map, that's the intended R115 area. The general plan talks about this as being medium large lot residential, and that's if you read the details of the general plan, it talks about, generally speaking, 15,000 square foot average, but that the planning commission is also encouraged to allow it to go maybe even to a quarter acre smaller, so 12,000 square foot lot sizes on average, if there are exemplary smart growth principles that are being implemented, which you may be able to find that this one, it does have a lot of exemplary smart growth principles being implemented. But the applicant so far is not asking for that small. Their development calculations, the R115 zone, actually gives them more lots than they're expecting to put in. So, and you can see that in the details of their concept plan. They're expecting to put in quite a bit less than what the R115 zone would otherwise allow. Along the river, the general plan talks a lot about creating that emerald necklace, the possibility of a public access way for Weaver River Parkway to go in. We are asking the applicant to install the Weaver River Parkway along that corridor. Applicant is voluntarily offering a 300-foot buffer from the river to be donated to the park district, about 35 or so acres of open space donated to the park district. In the staff report, you'll find that we're asking for a few improvements to be installed along that Weaver River Parkway. We ask for one bench every 500 feet. We ask for 2 parking lots, one on the north side of the property up in this area here, and one on the south side of the property here. The distance as you follow the river around to here is almost exactly a mile between trailheads, and that seems like a really good interval between restrooms. Specifically, we're asking in the that at the trailheads there are restrooms as well as water refilling stations. I even get into some details like a bike fix-it stand. You know, just a few things to help make it an inviting and amenable park for the community, even though it's not going to have soccer fields and stuff like that. This will be primarily a nature park. So that 300-foot buffer from the river, even though our ordinance says that no building can happen within 300 feet of the river, the applicant's taken a step further and said, well, we'll just give this entire piece over to the park district as our park's contribution, which seems like a pretty fair donation if it includes the installation of the facilities within it. This map here just shows a little bit clearer map for streets for the area. So you can see the streets we're talking about. At some point in time, 700 North is anticipated to be built. We will work with individual landowners on a case-by-case basis as that comes in. But whenever we see development come in, that's certainly a street that we're going to be looking for those developers to install. A lot of people, when they see maps like this, they get a little bit scared because it looks like there's a map that's, or a street that's going to be going through their property. I just want to make sure I stress for the benefit of the public that no one's coming to the property to build a street until you're ready for a street to be built. That's just generally how this works. So as landowners choose to sell their property to developers or choose to develop it themselves, that's when the county will look to get their portion of the street. Otherwise, the line is just a line on a map that helps us guide where other developers will put their infrastructure in. So you can see how 700 North does span this area here. Right in this area where I'm showing the map, kind of hard to see on the screen over there, there is a solid white line. That solid white line indicates that there is a segment of 700 North that exists right now. And so at some point in time, you could imagine that being expanded to the east and to the west to eventually intersect here with 4700 West. Again, at a time that those other landowners choose to develop, if ever. But with that in mind, the applicant knows that they are at the end of a dead-end road here on 3600, and that there needs to be some way for safety egress to happen for their subdivision. Regardless of how many lots they're putting in there, our code says no more than 30 homes can be located on the end of a dead-end road, and you can only go above 15 homes from 15 to 30 if you have an emergency egress. It also goes on to say that, I'm going to go to the next slide here, a little easier to see. It also states that for every additional 30 homes that you build, you have to have an additional emergency egress. And the allowance to build on the end of a dead-end road for up to 30 or 30, 30, and 30 with each having successive emergency egresses that are separate is in order to help the county realize the benefit of connecting streets back to the main street network. If we just said no development at the end of a dead-end road ever, it's very unlikely that we'll ever see a full development come in to make, for example, this connection, or maybe 900 is a good, this is 900 North here, or maybe 900 could be a good connection. If we don't allow someone to come in and extend it to the next property and then to the next property to the next property, it just is never going to happen. So that's why it's carved out that way. One of the differences that we're looking at, as you'll see in the staff report on this particular property, is instead of asking for an additional egress every 30 homes, we're looking at a single emergency egress, and that's just because of the nature of this particular area and what the applicant has volunteered to do. The applicant has volunteered to install this emergency egress, which is this red dashed line here, and fully finance this connection here. Now, the applicant doesn't have control over the land through that area and hasn't been able to acquire all the property yet. So if he finances that road, we'd be looking to him to escrow for that entire thing while he continues on working with other landowners in the area to make that connection. If that connection never comes to fruition, it may be a generational question at some point in time. Everybody will be different, you, me, people who live out there, and maybe we carve out opportunities for that connection to happen at some point in the future. But the proposed emergency egress is intended to be the egress in the meantime until that connection is made. Speaking of this property here, when this property was approved into two parcels, they did dedicate the east-west connection for 700. And so as soon as that gets recorded, that will be a dedicated right-of-way that we're going to ask this developer to install. Kind of hard to ask those two landowners of large lot subdivisions to install that much street, but not too hard to ask a subdivider that's going to put a couple hundred homes in to install that. So that'll save these two landowners a little bit of money on installing that and provide the county with a good opportunity for connections. So the white dashed lines that you see on this map are intended to be the line or to illustrate the lines that the applicant will, the legs of that street system that the applicant will install. And then the yellow is intended to show you where the applicant's willing to fund, but we haven't acquired or reserved that right of way yet. So just for your information. And then the red dashed line is where their proposed emergency egress is going to go. There's some pretty tight stipulations that I write in the staff report about that emergency egress. The applicant believes that they've got the right to cross for this emergency egress and to improve the emergency egress for emergency egress purposes. Staff hasn't seen any documents that suggest that, nor do we want to. Those are all private documents. So as long as the landowners agree that there is a right to do so, then there shouldn't be any issues. If there is not an agreement on the right to build the secondary egress, that's a matter for the courts to decide on. And if the courts decide that there isn't, then we know that we can't approve more than 14 homes. That's the number of homes already on 3600 plus the developer's number to reach the 30 for a dead-end road. So you'll see in the staff reports, we're recommending the development agreement limit the applicant to no more than 14 homes until that emergency egress can be installed, plus a month, which the installation period plus 1 month gives the owners the opportunity to seek reprieve from the court if in the event there is a disagreement on that egress. And during that time, if it's in limbo, then the applicant then knows they need to focus their efforts on other emergency egress, like maybe acquiring property here or maybe up in this area here. But it should be noted that just because a rezone happens doesn't mean the full development happens. It can only happen once appropriate egress is created by the developer. So anything more than 14 homes here.
Charlie, can I clarify one thing?
Sure.
Even with that emergency, I guess if that emergency egress is approved, how many homes does that allow? Because it still doesn't allow the entire community.
No, so through the development agreement, because the applicant is willing to fund this entire piece here, aside from being able to acquire the pieces now, that gives me a sense of comfort that that will come to fruition. If we didn't even have that piece, I would suggest that we limit the development with the emergency egress to no more than 44 homes, 14 plus another, wait, sorry, I did the math wrong. 14 plus another 30. So whatever that is.
The 46, I guess, if you're saying, there's existing 14 homes and they can build 16 to get to.
30 more. So yeah, 40 something. 4. Thanks. I don't know. Fast math in front of the microphone. So that'll limit them to that number of
But
homes.
each egress gives them 30 additional homes.
That's right. And it's got to be successive egresses. So 30 homes, an egress that goes somewhere, and then 30 homes, then an egress that goes somewhere. So that at every 30 home interval, there's the ability for those people to find their own egress out if there's, for some reason, the road is blocked the other direction. So that's the way the current ordinance is written. We have carved out some exceptions to that rule for other projects that we've approved in areas that are already really hard to reach, as long as those projects are helping solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're seeing here. This project would help solve the problem of making that connection.
So if 700 goes through, then how many homes can be built?
All of them. If 700 goes through and it's built to full standard, then all of the homes can be built because it won't be on a terminal road anymore.
Okay.
The big goal here, obviously, is to make sure that there's a safe way in and out. The emergency egress, we are requiring to be at least 20-foot improved travel surface. Doesn't have to be asphalt, just needs to be able to support a fire truck. And 20 feet wide does give the ability for two-way passing vehicle travel, not at high speeds and not with a lot of comfort because that's pretty narrow, but it still gives you the ability to pass as you go down there. If you get a full standard road in there to full asphalt width, then you got shoulders, you've got maybe even a center turn lane if it's a wide enough road, it just depends on how it's built. So that'll be something to look forward to, as well as complete improvements to 3600 West, which currently I drove down there just now and it's a pretty narrow road. So those improvements will need to be made to bring it up to full standard in order for them to get the amount of development they're looking to get in here.
Sorry, one more clarification.
Please.
So escrowing for 700 South gets them what?
So escrowing at least puts their money where their mouth is, but
Okay.
it doesn't get them anything definitive as far as, well, okay, let me back up. I think I understand your question differently now. So escrowing gives the county a sense of confidence that we could build that if we need it. If for some reason something went weird, the development went bust, but we got a few homes in here already, it gives the county the sense of confidence that we can go and work with landowners and acquire some kind of a right-of-way egress out of this area. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be right where that yellow line is. It just gives the county the opportunity to put it in at some point.
So you're saying even without the emergency egress, as long as they've done escrowed for 700 South, they'll have some sort of building?
So
I still don't understand.
no, let's
Is anyone else following?
let's highlight the intervals here.
Yeah.
So up to 14 without the egress, they install that red dash line, or really any emergency egress that meets the 20-foot wide standard. They can get then another 30 on
Additional
top
30.
of that.
Okay.
Okay. If they put in the connection, the 700 North connection, they don't need the egress at all. So the egress is really just a stopgap to make sure that there's a safe way in and out. What the landowners of the property where the egress is choose to do with that is really up to them in the future. Maybe it helps them get some development for a future roadway. But again, a little bit of a different question. If you close the gap, you get all of it because you don't have a dead end road anymore.
As escrowed or actually installed?
Installed.
So once installed, they can complete the development. The escrowing just is escrowing. Okay.
Yeah, so the way that I've written the report is escrowing gives the county the sense of confidence that that can be installed or will be installed.
Mhm.
And so as long as the secondary egress is installed, we would let them move forward with the entire amount, is what the staff recommendation is. You guys have full control over changing that.
As long
If
as
you'd like
the
to see something different.
Secondary egress.
So as long as this red line here is installed, we would let them continue to build to their full development potential.
That's the point I wasn't getting.
Mhm.
Okay, so they don't have to build 700 South, they just have to escrow for it in order to get the development entirely built.
That's right. And if it can be acquired while they're developing, while they're building out, then it should be installed by them. So there's the difference there.
Okay.
Any other questions about that? It's great observation. Great question. Okay. Sewer master plan. The county does have a sewer master plan for the area. We know we need a lift station. You can see right in the center of this the blue polygon, a lift station. That's kind of an ideal location because it's centrally located. The applicant obviously doesn't own property over here, so is looking to put a lift station in somewhere in this location here. In order for them to put it in that far away from this edge over here, that's just that much more fall that the gravity lines need to have. If somebody were to build here and then send a gravity line to the lift station, it just means it needs to be deeper. So they could potentially put that lift station right there, kind of off center, and still serve that entire area. That begs a question though. So you got that lift station, plus you have a gravity line that runs down 3600 that eventually makes it down to the gravity line that is currently installed that Central Weaver owns. With that in mind, the applicant understands what the engineering is going to request of them or require of them in installing that lift station and oversizing the lift station, oversizing the lines. And I haven't heard any trouble that the applicant hasn't expressed any challenges with doing so. If they do want a pioneering agreement, we've done that in the past. We put that in a development agreement. But absent that, we would just ask them to ask is a nice word, install the full diameter pipe and the entire lift station, which they haven't pushed back on, by the way. Floodplain boundaries. So you could see there's a lot of floodplain across the river. I don't know how exactly the land lies, but for whatever reason on this side of the river, it seems like the floods don't, according to the maps, the floods don't push as far into this property as they do on the other side of the river. You can see here that the other side of the river primarily is zone AE. AE denotes that it has been determined what the base flood elevation is for that area. And so there is some engineering specificity to understand how these waters flow. On the subject property, if that area along the river, the 300-foot buffer, is donated to the park district and not built in, I don't see any reason why flooding will be a particular issue for this property. Be interested to hear if any members of the public or others feel differently on that. Wetlands inventory, I just grabbed that real quick since we're so close to the river. Just wanted to see what kind of wetlands we're looking at. And other than the waterways that run through the property, the river and the oxbow, I don't see any wetlands according to the Fish and Wildlife, what is that? Fish and Wildlife Official Wetland Mapper that you can find online. So with that in mind, I mean, there are a lot of details in the staff recommendation for what goes into a development agreement. I put a lot of deliberation into those details, but there's certainly always room for adjustment if you see the need to make adjustments. Those details can be incorporated into a development agreement in whatever form or edited form that you guys may want to see them if you do choose to forward a recommendation. You guys know that this is as a legislative action. It's not an item that you're going to be approving tonight. It's an item you're going to make a recommendation on. That recommendation will go to the county commission. They'll make the final decision. Between your recommendation, if your recommendation is favorable, between your recommendation and the county commission's decision, that's when we'll work out the other details of the development agreement. We want to make sure we get your buy-in on the details that we have here. When I say other details, I mean the more legalese that goes into it. You're deciding on what the development standards should be, and then the lawyers will debate how to write the rest of that document. So you've got, really, as I see it, 3, maybe 4 options here. You can recommend approval based on what the staff has said here. You could recommend approval based on what staff has said, plus whatever you want to make changes to in staff's recommendation. You can table it ask us for more information, and if you do that, you need to table it to a time certain. And then the last thing you do is recommend denial if you don't like it. If you do recommend denial, just give good findings. Make your findings based on the general plan or based off of the need for the area, based off of timing, based off of location. You can recommend denial on any of those points. Any questions for me? Any questions about the staff report? That was easy.
Thanks, Charlie. Excuse me. All right, this item is slated tonight for a public hearing. So commissioners, are you guys good? We move into public hearing and then we discuss after? Okay. All right, so we're going to open and close a public hearing. If members of the public wish to come up and speak, 3 minutes to speak. Once we open the public hearing, please state your name and address for the records for the minutes. With that being said, I'll accept a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do I got a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now in public hearing. If you'd like to come up to the microphone and
Hello, my name is Dean Faust. I am here representing Darren Hammond. He's an attorney for Smith Knowles. My address is 2544 East, 150 South in Layton. I don't know anything about this issue. He just asked me to come and read this letter that he drafted. With that said, dear Mr. Hewitt Froyer Wilkinson, this office represents Brad Blanche, Taraki Farms LLC, and Taraki Water Company. It has come to my attention that Weber County has issued a staff report late last week, which makes inaccurate conclusions that, if performed, would violate my client's property rights. The staff report that was recently made public discusses a zoning application by Heritage Land Holdings, which has been identified as application number ZMA 2023-17. This report is contrary to the intentions of my client and Heritage Land Holdings LLC. On page 11 of that staff report, Weber Supply is discussed. It is incorrect that Hooper Irrigation Company would supply the secondary water to propose the river project. The Heritage Land Holding is under contract to use the Cherokee Water Company water and facilities for the river project, regardless of how it is zoned. However, the staff report makes it appear that the Hooper Irrigation Company would be providing that secondary water. Hooper Irrigation Company is not part of that development and appears to only be attempting to make itself a part of that development by unconstitutional Weber County ordinances, which favor Hooper Irrigation over other water companies. The application Weber County ordinances, which are cited in that section of the staff report, violate the Equal Protection Clause, the Due Process Clause, and the Takings Clause of the United States Constitution. However, said ordinances are equitably and illegally monopolistic in nature. My client's intent to vigorously pursue and defend their right to supply the water for the river project as Heritage is contractually bound to do. Taraki's secondary water service area has been provided to Weber County by prior notice to the county, as well as a water covenant recorded between Taraki and Heritage. Numerous notices of Taraki's water service area have been provided to Weber County. Hooper Irrigation has no local water storage in place, and its closest storage and associated system facility is approximately 8 miles away from the development site. Taraki has substantial water storage approved by the Utah Division of Water Rights. Taraki has every right and every intention to provide the secondary water for this project, and we request that the erroneous information in the subject staff report be immediately corrected and or removed. Given that a hearing on the rezone application is scheduled for Tuesday, January 9, 2024, this letter is further noticed to Weber County and its representatives that the course of action which it is pursuing in relation to the aforementioned matter will likely result in litigation by my client against Weaver County for wrongfully favoring of Hooper irrigation over other valid water sources and companies. Sincerely, Smith Knowles, PC, M. Darren Hammond, attorney at law for Smith Knowles.
Thank you.
Do you want a copy of this?
I believe, do we have one?
We have.
I've got several here, so.
No, you can give them to Liam. Thank you. Everybody's weather alert. We got a snow squall coming, so everyone be safe.
Hello, I am Joseph Drew. I live in Marriott Slaterville, 405 South, 2100 West. I acquired the property directly to the east across the river in 1973 when I was 23 years old. 55 acres. If the gentleman would put the map, that's the big blue that had the big blue. Yeah, that's the map. And near the top of the map, you can maybe pick out where Mill Creek goes into the river, that confluence right there. I own from that south along the riverbank to where you can see kind of an open field that's being tilled, and there's a road west from that takes you to the sewer outfall that Weber Central has right there. So it's that parcel. I'm familiar with the river for the last 51 years. And every year on my side, I get some flooding. Some years from surface water that backs the creek up and floods part of my property. And most years I get flooding from groundwater. Just the water that goes through the ground and fills my low spots. The years of 83 and 84 and 85 were epic years with flooding. I had 30 heads of cows and calves, and about the same of hogs down there on the river. And I had to swim the cattle out and take them up by my house. And a similar thing with the hogs. I had to get a small boat and rope them and tie their legs and throw them in the boat and then put them in the trailer about a quarter mile away. That was the extent of the water in those years. About 440 yards away from the riverbank. And as I looked standing there from my hog pens and things and looked across the river, I could see a similar thing on the west side of the river where this subdivision is. Since that time, I've had, I figure on some water on my place. Last year, I didn't have trouble with the river surface water. I think it's because they can accurately measure it now better than they ever have. But I did get fair flooding from groundwater in the low areas of my place. And that's what I've expected over these 50 years, is some water every spring. Now, there is a housing development just across the creek from my property on the river there. You can maybe pick out the streets that are there. Those people last year went to the city and asked for a general call from all residents from Marriott Slaterville City who could go to go fill sandbags. Their property, the river is, in a sense, a living thing, and it erodes the banks, and water finds its level, whether it goes over the surface or whether it just goes through the ground. And those people were pumping a lot and had a serious grief. And there were people from the city who helped fill sandbags. So this is a designated floodplain area. And early on, when I was young, I wanted to build a house on my property down there. But seeing how the river, what a force that is,
Mr. Keever, could you wrap up your comments? We've been well over our 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
We appreciate the
I
information.
want to invite you to come down during the high time of the river. And I know you rely on others for opinions, but to see it and have your own perception of the power and what's happening down there on that land is before it would be invaluable to you to come at that time of the year. And thank you.
Good evening. I'm Courtney Valentine, 3934 West, 2275 South in Taylor, Utah. I own the parcel that's notched out, the 10-acre parcel where the proposed accesses of 3600 and 700 are, well, their proposed accesses are going through. We just recently received final approval on our subdivision for 2 lots, and I gave up quite a lot of concessions for that to happen. 700 alone would not exist without the 1,000 plus feet by 30 some that I gave up along, that's almost an acre. And then the 1,500 feet of private road, which I'm under contractual obligation to maintain at 30 feet wide and install city sewer and water to permit my house. I do not see at this moment a single ingress or egress. I see a proposed emergency one, but I don't even see how it's feasible on 3600 when 3600 is going to be veered on other people's property, and it's not wide enough where it meets 700 to meet the ingress and egress restrictions proposed by Weber County. So at this point, I find that a concern. I also find it a concern that at no point do I want another road to cross what property I have left, because that road would have to be a minimum of 100 feet wide. And that would be another acre from my 9.61, which is already down to 7, to get what I, have left already. So, I mean, those are my concerns on it. No one from this subdivision has addressed us or me, for that matter, and what their proposals are. I just see what they keep putting on Frontier, and it's roads crossing my property with, no concern or address towards me. And I find that concerning in itself. So that's just the opinion I wanted to voice tonight. And wish you all the best in your vote.
Thank you. I was waiting for it. I'm glad to see you. We missed you for a while.
If I wish I'd seen the workshop. You all probably know I was part of the, going against them the last time. I will admit I actually like this one a little bit better than the last one, but I want to make sure that some of the stuff that they wanted last time, like the cost of the annexed land, that still needs to be part of that development agreement. I am kind of worried with what they're saying about the egress ingress. I have right now, I'm just waiting for perks. I've got a 3-lot subdivision starting. So does this mean if he gets in before me and I perk, I've got to wait? Because we can only allow, 46 homes down that street? Is that what I gathered?
Ma'am, could you tell me your name and address,
Oh,
please?
sorry. Jill Hipwell.
You should know the drill.
Jill Hipwell, 585 South, West Weaver. I'm so used to now. And I was part of the general plan, so I see what's coming. We knew what was going on at 3600 West. But yeah, I just want to make sure that some of the stuff that was implemented with the Cherokee Farms program is still getting taken care of with this. And I don't know if this is the time to do it or when they go in for it's got to be on the development agreement, I would assume. And so just want to make sure you guys are keeping up on what was done before. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments for the public on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do we got a second?
Second.
Lots. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're now at a public hearing. So I think we can kind of jump through and address a few of these. Charlie, you can help me out on that first, Mr. Faust. So the staff report was amended, was changed. I don't think there was any harm by what was put in it before. I don't think there was any intent of one way or another, but it was amended and we all received a new staff report. And being that this is a rezone, secondary water is not a utility of, help me out, Charlie, that has to be done by ordinance for a rezone procedure. That's a subdivision, correct?
That's right. We just want to get, with rezone, we just want to get a general sense of understanding that it's possible. If it doesn't seem practical or possible in any way because of utility issues, then you got to ask yourself if it's the right place for a rezone to happen. But it seems like it can happen. In fact, if we've got water companies fighting over providing for it, then we know that it's not a matter of it not having water. It's a question of who's going to provide it. And that can all be worked out at subdivision.
And I think in culinary waters, it was a stipulation in culinary water that they had to have secondary water in order to get culinary. So it's got to be worked out at that point. So
That's right. That's right. And the Taylor West Weaver has specific requirements or desires for the qualifications and type of secondary water system. So they'll dictate that themselves.
And Mr. Kibiru's comments regarding flooding and that down there on the river. Institutional knowledge is great, but sometimes we have to go off the documentation we receive correct off floodplain maps and everything else, even though we all know they probably aren't the most correct. But
if there is any concern, you can certainly, we can get in the development agreement that no development will occur within the known floodplain. We do know that the floodplain boundaries have been recently redrawn. I don't know if the firm maps have been formally adopted, but they're out there. And the flood boundaries that I showed you doesn't show the new boundaries. So it may entirely be possible that there is a little bit different configuration of those flood boundaries. So if you want to add something in there for the development agreement to say no development will occur within a known floodplain, that's fine.
Next comment regarding the parcel there in the middle. It's my understanding that currently no roads are platted to go through Mr. Valentine's property. They're just gonna go to it at some point, maybe someday in the future. They might connect, they might never connect, but
So
that's
700 east-west will be dedicated and will be installed, and I think it'll be to his benefit having that road installed by the developer. North-south connection, that's a different question for a different day. If himself or whoever buys those properties in the future that they want to redivide and redevelop, we'll acquire it at that time. Same way we've acquired 700. If it does never happen, I do know that this proposal, the streets that are being proposed on this have sufficient ways around that gap. Here in Ogden, you see a gap in Monroe Boulevard. You can drive to the very end of Monroe Boulevard, and then you got nothing, and then Monroe picks up on the other side. It's been that way for, I don't know, as long as Monroe has existed, and it's only recently that North Ogden City has acquired the property to extend that through. So that's not uncommon. Sometimes it seems weird to have a road that goes to nowhere, but if you're taking the long game, looking for the next 50 to 100 years, we just want to make sure we don't disable opportunity for that landowner, this landowner, or others in the area.
yes, sir.
Mhm. Yeah, so the white dotted line is,
Is that the 700 portion?
let me back it up so you can see it.
Yeah, but it's not being constructed. It's just slated for future use, but they're not going to build it.
There's a very small part that's yellow there that's on his property, but the way the dash is, it's hard to see. But through his property, it's not. Yeah.
Is it this one here?
Oh, that was just on the general plan. I mean, that's just like Charlie mentioned, that's just lines that were thrown as a stab on there when the general plan under our transportation section of it. So they're just lines on a map right now. How it gets built, that's kind of up to landowners and willing seller, willing buyers, correct?
And we have had a conversation with him when the subdivision was his subdivision was being approved. One of the things that we did discuss is the possibility of a north-south, and he just said this is just 2 lots. That's just too much, and we don't disagree. Whenever we're looking at exactions like this, we got to make sure it's roughly proportionate to their impact, and having a requirement for him to donate quite a bit of acreage for streets that really aren't going to be as impacted by his 2 lots. Just seemed like an overreach. He did donate or dedicate, the 700 east-west corridor. Also, if you follow this red line down, the property he mentioned a 30-foot wide private road or private street that comes down this way here. One of the things that we allow is, as long as it's dedicated to the county where a public street should go for the future, you can build a private street. And this gives opportunity for him and this developer to work together on actually getting a public street built so he doesn't have to build any of that private street. And he may not be fully aware of that, but we can help him understand that. Timing and order of operation, we never really know when this subdivision plat's going to come in. And so we'll work with him to get that installed unless he waits for this developer to install it themselves.
Okay, thanks. Charlie, that good? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Mrs. Hipwell's comments. From my understanding, everything with the previous approval that was approved is now over with. It's expired, right? So this is a completely new look at. So everything with that cluster that was approved down there prior is all
the ordinance changes that have taken place since that time are now applicable, and this ordinance will need, this development will need to comply with all new ordinances.
okay. And then to her question, because that's a good, how does that work? They're working on planting that 3-lot subdivision. So then does that take that number from 14 down to 11 until that, or is it first? How does that work?
It's unfortunately first come, first serve. Whoever plats first, we can't count unless we know who's anticipating what. Now we do know that the Hippos are planning on doing some more lots in there, and we've had every intention to help them with that. We have no reason to believe that the secondary egress at this time is going to be interrupted, and so everything will be just fine as long as that egress is there. We do have it written down that egress is only allowed to be an egress if this applicant, this developer, can show that there is that lawful ability for anyone to pass and that it goes ungated. And so as soon as that's installed, anybody should be able to allow that or use that in the event of an emergency. That said, if for some reason that can't be accomplished, it could very well be a race to 30. Well, actually, technically right now it's to 15 without an egress. And right now I believe there is 16 there. So that egress needs to be there for anyone else to realize the benefit.
So a race to 14. So either 14 or 3 and 11.
Yep.
Right?
You got it.
Yes, sir. Pull your mic down for.
We're not voting on that tonight.
Well,
We're basically just saying that he can have our 15. And then he's got to come in with some type of proof of egress and egress.
yeah. So what we're potentially voting on tonight is a stipulation that'll go in a development agreement regarding that egress, that he's got to be able to prove that that exists. And if you look through the details of the staff report, we're asking for a certain amount of things to happen before we're comfortable knowing that that is a secondary egress. So we will have an opportunity to work with them to gain that sense of comfort.
Just
over
for
time.
the record, there's 2 corners on that existing egress or ingress, whichever you call it, that are 90 degrees.
Yep.
And there's no way they could get a fire truck through there.
That's a good observation.
And so if it's 20 foot and you have to bring one of those big rigs down there and turn on a 90, there's no way without going on somebody else's property.
So that's a good observation. One of the things, and we want to make sure we wrote it clearly enough.
B, isn't it?
Yep.
Staff recommendations 3B.
Yep. So let me see what I got here. Yep. Fully operational and accessible for emergency use. So if the fire chief says he can't get his vehicle down there, that wouldn't be acceptable. It wouldn't work. And so they would need to figure out either something else, work with a neighboring landowner or something to make sure that they can make that curve usable by a fire truck.
I'm good with that. But we're not voting on that tonight. That's future when they come in with the subdivision.
So your vote tonight will be on whether or not these stipulations apply through a development agreement. You're not voting on whether or not you're going to approve a subdivision with the easement. That'll come later. They'll just need to follow the rules of the development agreement, which you are voting on tonight.
Okay.
I think these stipulations, especially in that section B, covers a lot of the concerns on that egress road.
I agree.
Okay. Any other questions for staff on this item? Any questions, or do we want to hear from the applicant?
Let's hear from him
Or her.
Marche
or her.
Jessica, either one of you?
Thank you, staff. Charlie has worked a ton with us on trying to go
Give us
through
your
the
name.
details. Oh, first name is Marche Stokes, and I'm with Heritage Land Development. Again, Charlie, thank you. Staff has done a wonderful job of trying to help us figure out how we can make this better than what was previously approved, which I think everybody agrees probably wasn't great. So staff has really put a lot of time and effort into the report you've seen, and we as the developer do feel like all things listed in there, stipulations, as tedious as they may seem, are what needs to happen. I had a pretty good conversation with staff and indicated, they asked if we were worried about certain aspects, or do you feel like, are you going to push back on that? And as of right now, no. We feel like it's all per code, ordinance, should be expected of the developer. Again, we're hoping to bring to the table some things like this trail path and this observatory and giving that to the park and making it more usable for the public along that river, as well as hopefully putting in this lift station, which we actually do have experience with Weber County and putting in regional lift stations. So now that we've done that rodeo once, we feel pretty confident in it and think that could greatly benefit the county, given that the general plan's calling out for one pretty dang close to that location anyways. So we are aware of some of the concerns. We're aware of a neighbor's concern and some civil matters that have been brought to the attention. We are fully aware and working to resolve those, if you say. Do you guys have any other questions that you want to direct? We had a really good work session prior to this that I felt good about, but we are open to answering more questions, want to support staff and the county. So
Anything? Looks like we're good. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, commissioners, discussion.
I just wanted to ask if everyone, the one thing I was worried about was just making sure that if there was some sort of a pioneering agreement, that it only included the upsizing of the pipes, not the initial demand and installation of any utilities. So I've written that out as an addition to all the other conditions. Or I'm trying to think, are they not really conditions, but considerations to include in the development agreement that I'd like to include. I just wanted to see how everyone felt about that.
Sarah, are you talking about the upsizing from 400 north towards the north, or?
Just any utilities that they put in, I'd like them to put it in for the future use, not for just the demand that they're going to require. And then just making sure that they're required to pay the full cost of installing whatever infrastructure utilities needs to go in there.
To get there.
Yeah, all the way to get there. And then if they want to recoup some of the costs for the future use, it's just the upsizing of the utilities, not installing the utilities themselves. So
I think that's good to add. I think that's how most are in those pioneering agreements.
That means Sarah has to make the motion.
pass my notes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I just noticed an error in the staff report. If the motion can accommodate for it, it would be helpful. If you take the language in the model motions, it talks about 134 acres, but the document references 147.56 acres. And I think the 147.56 is the accurate number. Regardless, it's not going to be more than the legal description calls for it, but I just want to make sure we're not limiting it to 134 just in case.
147.5.
6.
5.56,
0.56, right?
5.6.
Okay.
Well, let's round up.
Put that all in there. That's
Nope. Okay. Any further discussion, commissioners? If not, I will accept a motion on this item.
I'll make that motion.
You gonna read that whole thing?
No, I'm not, but I'm going to add some. I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the county commission. Make sure I get this right. For file number ZMA 2023-17, an application to rezone approximately 147.56 acres of land located at approximately 500 north and 3600 west from the A2 zone to the R115 zone as illustrated in Exhibit C. Oh, we just updated that. But I do so with the following additional edits and corrections. I'd like to add all of the staff recommendations to be included in the zoning development agreement, and those are on pages 16 and 17 of our packet. I'd like to include an additional item to be put in the development agreement that all utilities shall be built to the required future build-out size requirements. A pioneering agreement may be included in development agreement and shall only cover the cost of upsizing the utilities from the size required by the development impact to the future build-out sizing. And I offer this recommendation with the following findings. I'll just state that the findings that are listed in our packet, staff findings 1 through 3 on page 17. That maybe for the residents here, I'll state those. After the considerations listed in this recommendation are applied through a development agreement, the proposal generally supports and is anticipated by the vision, goals, and objectives of the Western Weber General Plan. The project is beneficial to the overall health, safety, and welfare of the community as provided in detail in the Western Weber General Plan. And number 3, a negotiated development agreement is the most reliable way for both the county and the applicant to realize mutual benefit.
Okay, take a motion. That was a
Any
lot.
discussion?
Did you want to just change the acre while you're making the motion?
She did. Yeah.
I was asleep, sorry.
So was Casey.
I was doing the same thing.
No, she got it. Okay, any discussion on that motion? I got a second for that motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Commissioner Andriotti.
Aye.
Commissioner Favero.
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern.
Aye.
Commissioner Neville.
Aye.
Commissioner Clont.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is going to be item 4.2 ZMA 2023-8. This is going to be another public hearing for a consideration on a request to rezone 72.75 acres from A2 to R115 and R3. The development known as Navy Meadows, located at approximately 4,000 west, 3,300 south. Felix.
Yes, good evening. Looks like the snow is starting to fall, so I don't want to belabor this too long, but I'm just going to make sure I cover the bases and work through a couple slides I've prepared. So just to start out, this slide we have up right now, it shows this property and its general location. So 3,300 south and 3,500 west. And so the request is to rezone this 64.16 acres to R115. It stands for residential 115. And then the area in yellow is requested to be zoned R3, and that equates to about 8.59. And I'll go on to the next slide. So this is a concept plan that was submitted by the applicant. The applicant is here with us in the audience today, Mr. Doug Hamblin, and they've created this development. It's called the Navy Meadows, and you can see what they've designed. They've designed some residential spaces and streets and pathways around the Hooper Slough, which is on the left-hand side. It's labeled Parkway, 4.95 acres. And then also some open space and pathways along the Hooper Canal, as well as that park, that 4.29 acre park. And you can also see on the south edge of this, you have the townhome proposal as part of this. And moving on to the next slide. So here we have this is staff's comments. We've taken this concept and we've taken the rules from the connectivity incentivized development. Specifically when designing roads, we're looking for minimum distance between intersections, or I'm sorry, maximum of 660 feet, and that's between road intersections. And then maximum distance between pathways is 440 feet. And so that's what we've done. We've shown parks around the perimeter, parks throughout the open space and parkways. And we've also shown the creation of that road pretty much going straight northward through the center. There's a street adjacent pathway there. That's actually proposed. Part of the general plan indicates that to become an 80-foot right of way. And so what staff has asked is that this 80-foot right of way, the access is from this 80-foot right of way be limited. And we've also asked that their plan includes a street adjacent pathway and an 80-foot right of way along 3300 South. Move on to the next slide. And here we have the recreation plan. And when we're in this case, we're looking at smart growth principles, which every rezone proposal that comes through unincorporated Weber County, in order to be considered for rezone, it must show compliance with smart growth principles. So I'll walk through some of those things right now. And so public roads and pathways, and also parks and recreation. You can see here the legend indicates that 3900 West, which is that road that goes straight up through the center, will have a trail and a pathway. And then 3300 South will have a street side pathway. And the Hooper Slough will have a green space buffer and a pathway. And as far as the second smart growth principle deals with water conservation. The county staff and the planning commission have taken measures to actually write into the subdivision code, or I'm sorry, into the code that section 108-7-12 implement water wise landscaping through all new developments. So that's something that this development will need to abide by. And dark skies. This will help to create a nice development while also minimizing the impact of light pollution that can come through residential development. And so staff would also include that with the development agreement. I'm going to go to my notes here, make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, I'll go on to the next slide. And then emissions and air quality. So part of our goal is also to create many modes of transportation. So if kids want to walk to school, they can. If someone wants to hop on their bike and take a pathway, a safe pathway, then they can. And that's part of what we're planning for. And also renewable energy. So the Navy Meadows plan does not have plans for renewable energy, but that's something that either could be added to the development agreement upon the Planning Commission request. And here we're looking at the some of the criteria for some of the things we'd look at as part of a rezone. And so we're looking at, in this case, we're looking at compatibility with the surroundings. So the reason I brought up this map from the general plan, this is the future land use map. And it shows this area being part of the annexation area for West Haven City. And it also shows the area to the east of this property, highlighted in red, as mixed use residential. And the area in yellow is for medium to large residential. And the reason I put those green X's in that location is to indicate the location of commercial area that's potentially planned to be rezoned to commercial as part of the West Haven annexation plan. And then that green X to the south is a development that has come in with, and it includes lots, small lots down to 12,000 square feet, even some townhouse units down in that location. And this slide, we're also looking at the affected to effects to adjacent properties. And so what I wanted to highlight with this image is with the added number of units that are potential in this development, there's definitely going to be an increase in traffic, and that traffic, the impact will be most immediately felt on 3300 South. And I drew in this orange line to indicate that the Wasatch Front Regional Council has planned that there will be a route connecting to Hinckley Drive and ultimately connecting to I-15. And that would be designed to handle a large capacity of traffic. And here we have impacts to natural and ecological conditions. So with the preservation of the parkway and the inclusion of a pathway, Hooper Slough could very well become a very beautiful area. And we also I've also included this image of the taken from the wetlands mapper, which shows the presence of emergent wetlands. And what emergent wetlands are is they're areas between permanent dry and permanent wet. So it's like an emergent zone between those two spaces. And what the developer would be required to do is to work with the Army Corps of Engineers and to find out if these are indeed emergent wetlands. If they happen to be emergent wetlands of value, then the developer would need to find areas to replace what was lost. And so let's go into the next slide. And we're also looking at in this stage, we're also looking at facilities and services. And so this development, it proposes to connect to the Hooper irrigation system for pressurized irrigation and the culinary water from Taylor West Weaver Water, as well as the connection to the Central Weaver Sewer District. After speaking with the county engineers, they indicated that there is a trunk line that runs all along 3500 West, and that's a West Haven City trunk line, or a West Haven trunk line. And there's also, as part of the sewer master plan, there's also a lift station shown along 3300 South. And I've also highlighted the big circles. Those are in green. Those are the parks within the area. And then there's an elementary school that's just to the west of 3500 West. And there's a fire station that's just a block north on it's 2200 North Street and 3500 West. And going to the next slide here. I wanted to bring this up to kind of show you a picture of what the West Haven City future land use map looks like. And so you can see that area of C2 that would become commercial at some point. And let's see here. Going to the next slide is possible motions from the Planning Commission. And so you have the option to make several motions. Motion to forward a positive recommendation as is. Forward a positive recommendation with changes. Motion to table and motion to recommend denial. As was mentioned in our pre-meeting, there is some, I guess probably good to talk about the future land use map. And what is indicated in that future land use map for this area. And it clearly shows this area only for medium to large residential, which would line up well with R1 zoning. And so what staff has done is we've put together a couple of maybe additional things to consider for the Planning Commission. So if the Planning Commission would allow, would prefer, there would need to be good justification for allowing R3 zoning in this location. Staff has read the general plan and found a couple of sections that could justify allowing R3 in this location, particularly the section that mentions, it's on page 38 of the general plan, that mentions the creation of R3. It specifically mentions mixed use residential. And so the creation of mixed use residential in this location would create a better balance of housing affordability options for families who cannot afford a single family residence. Or there's also an action plan in the general plan. It's, action plan 1.1.1, and it's on page 81. And it also it mentions the creation of various housing types for families who cannot afford a single family dwelling. So that's something to consider as part of a motion. And I think that pretty much covers what I had for that one. Any questions for me?
So just one question, Felix.
Yeah.
This was, excuse me, brought up in the pre-meeting. So my understanding is in order to do the R3, we've got to do a general plan amendment to the map, correct?
You don't have to, but if you want to stick to the strict interpretation or application of the future land use map, then it would probably be beneficial. We did talk to the applicant about this early on. They can come straight in with an application to just go to the R3 zone or townhomes or whatever it is. Without doing a map amendment, they can try it with the map amendment. Applicant chose to just try it with the rezone itself. If you guys aren't comfortable with that, if you guys would rather see a map amendment first, you may want to just table it to the next meeting. We've got sufficient time between now and then to put together a map amendment proposal, work with the applicant to do that, and then you can make a recommendation on both at the same time, if you choose to do that.
So just a couple, concerns, I guess, with that. When we went to R3 on the previous one, just up the road from there, we were able to get some low to moderate income housing components added into that and a few things. Can we do that at this point, or would it be, my opinion, it's cleaner to amend the map along with, what it's going to show.
Yeah, it certainly is cleaner. In fact, if we don't amend the map to enable this one, but this one does get passed, we should probably think about amending this property when we amend the map on other properties later on down the road. If you are hoping to get some moderate income housing, deed restricted properties, this is the time to ask for it. We don't have any other requirement in our code later on down the line. And so if you're looking to get something in there, I think this is an appropriate time. We've had a lot of discussions internally about what it means to be moderate income, and I want to make sure it's clear to you guys. If you take the general multiplier of 3 to a household income, median household income of the area, subtract 80% or subtract 20% is your moderate income family. So we're talking about families that make about $54,000 a year total for the entire household income. Multiply that by 3, you're talking about $160,000, $170,000 building, which are to find a townhome anywhere worth that, let alone a single family residence. So we're really struggling in Weber County and across the Wasatch Front to even address moderate income families' needs when it comes to housing. But one thing that we do have a benefit of is if we're looking at townhomes, we could potentially, it's just making more. And that's one strategy that the state has put together, is if you just have more residential available, you're going to, by definition of market forces, keep housing prices a little bit more stable, at least stop them from going up so fast. So you're just increasing the supply. Or on the other hand, it's not too hard or too far of a stretch to say that townhome is at least more moderate than single family dwelling. And so maybe we're not talking about true moderate income housing. We're talking about maybe attainable housing at that point, or housing affordability. I would imagine any one of these townhomes would go anywhere between 3 and 450 at fair market value. But if you would like to see the developer maybe do restrict 1 or 2 of them, by all means, put it in there.
I just have one question. If we were to table this, then do we go ahead with our public hearing tonight? And since we have, people here that came to speak,
We'll have to.
and then we'd have another public hearing to change would it take another public hearing to change the map?
You got it. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Chair, I have a clarifying question. So we're not changing the map. We're allowing the applicant to propose to change the map. Is that correct? We're not just going to change it.
Correct.
Okay. There's a process for that part as well, right?
There is. And even if we want to change it, there's still a process for that. We haven't noticed specifically for a general plan map amendment, and we would need to notice for that first.
My opinion, and I'm not trying to just make this go on another month. I mean, overall, at the end of the day, I don't really see a lot of issues with this development, but I just think for the matter of the process, I think we need to stick to that and go through that map amendment on that. But with that being said as well, I still think we hold the public hearing for this and and then move forward from there. I mean, really, when we look at a rezone, we're seeing, a color on a map, not necessarily the lot lines and everything that's shown in here. So I think we can also bring the applicant up and let them, do we want to rezone and consider the whole thing at R115 right now? And then they come back at a later time if they want to do the R3, or, because that's how it was noticed right now, was going to that R115. So I think there still is the potential to move it forward just without the R3 at the, for right now. So, yeah, if no other questions for staff, let's move on to a public hearing.
Thank you.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to open public hearing.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor to open public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're now in a public hearing. Just before I did have one emailed into me just not too long ago, and so I wasn't able to share it out to all you guys, but it was from Carrie Call, City Council from West Haven. Just asked that we would consider tabling this and ask the developer to come have conversations with West Haven prior to their approval. Says West Haven was not notified about the project, and then also mentions that Central Weber will service the treatment of the sewer, but the Special Services District, or West Haven Special Services District, has the closest line. And then from what they can tell, R3 isn't on the general plan map. So that was just a comment from Carrie Call, West Haven City Council, for the record. All right. Anybody from the public wishing to come up and speak, please state your name and address. And just in the interest of time, please be around that 3-minute mark. So.
My name is Christine Clark, and I'm a resident of West Haven at 3743 West, 3550 South. And this development will be just a skip and a jump across the road for me. I have concerns about the R3 as well. I'm a resident of almost 30 years. Same house, same place, that jump and a skip across the road. And West Haven has certainly had its share. I think we have more than our fair share of townhomes and apartments in this little town. So to add another section of townhomes when, by saying, well, there are other townhomes nearby. We have a supply of patio homes very nearby, huge 3 and 4-story apartment complexes nearby. But this area, being R115, I think that should be our limit. It should all stay that. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't like to see anything bigger than a third of a lot for residential, but and as was just mentioned in that email, I think a good faith, good neighbor, the developer would want to go to West Haven and have it discussed there, especially with the recent ordinance that these unincorporated areas, the sewer has to go through West Haven. I think it just makes logical sense to go there first. But as a resident and close by, my preference would be to just simply not have townhomes, period. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Cox. I'm a resident of Clinton, Utah, but I'm here representing the Hadley Family Trust, who borders the property. We do agree with the concerns with the R3 zoning and the high density housing up in that area as well. It's been rural for forever, and kind of the way that they'd like to continue to see that community grow. As not being part of West Haven at this time, I think that's kind of the path that they would like to see going forward. Some other concerns on the Hooper Slough. What's the impact of this subdivision going to have on that slough? The current drainage on both sides of the road on 3300 South is it kind of all flows right to that one intersection there just east of the Hadley family's property. And if there's not a good floodplain plan, I mean, that water is going to sit there. And it's I've seen it. I've been part of the family for 40 years, and I've seen it sitting there in the spring, in the summer, after a hard rain. The water just sits in that property out there. And one of the concerns of the landowners along that street is, if they raise the level of the property behind them to build these houses, all that water is going to settle in on their property. And that would be a huge concern for them, and encroach on their ability to maintain their lifestyle the way they've had it for all these years. And that has to be addressed, I think, at some point, on what they're going to do to work with the drainage. The road itself is very narrow, with drains on both sides of it, and and it's much higher than the property owners' houses along that street. And so there's also concern on what they're going to do to widen that road to make access for the school that's being built below, as well as the much heavier traffic that's coming along that road that needs to be addressed as well. And how are they going to protect the landowners there, without just eminent domain and saying this is the way it's going to be, like it or not. I think that needs to be considered as well by the Planning Commission and everyone else as well. So, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion, do I got a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we're now our public hearing. I'll kind of address some of the notes I got, and if anybody else wishes to jump in and anything I missed. I think, and the applicant can speak more on this, but I think one of the problems with looking at West Haven and going to West Haven, this property isn't contiguous with any other properties in West Haven. It's kind of an island in the middle. So the only way that they could truly annex this ground into West Haven is happen to annex someone else's property to get it to be contiguous to go in. And then considerations on the R3. You know, I think that's up to discussion, and that's why I really feel that the general plan, the map needs to be amended, you know, so that this runs through the process the way it should, if that's going to be considered. Some of the concerns with the drainage and the Hooper Slough, a lot of that stuff's addressed when it comes to subdivision phase. Any new understanding that all of it's going from open agricultural land, that all is going to let everything infiltrate. But when a subdivision comes in, the requirements on the development side is they have to build detention basins and retention basins on site to retain 80% of that water off that hard surface before it goes into the drains and stuff. So they kind of work as a quasi flood control, as well as a means to treat some of that water off all that new hard surface that could potentially come in. Let's see. I know 3300, and maybe Charlie can speak more to this, is slated with the county for a future project for widening. I know the developer would be responsible for widening the portions that front theirs. I believe this is it an 80-foot of cross section?
It's slated to eventually be an 80-foot cross section, yes.
So they would have to install that half width to at least through what they are until the county brings a project to fill in the gaps.
Which includes pedestrian facilities, at least across the portions of the property they own. I would even encourage, if neighboring landowners would be willing to work with the county and the developer to get this applicant to install the rest of that pathway across those other frontages, again, if they're willing. I don't think we should force that.
That was some of the notes I took down. Did I miss anything from you
I
guys?
just have a question that goes along with your first one that you addressed.
Yeah.
With the West Haven thing. What is the obligation to notify West Haven from the applicant? Is there an obligation there?
Charlie, help me out, but I think only if it's contiguous, correct?
If it's within 500 feet of property that West Haven owns, then they need to be noticed. Otherwise, they're not listed as a registered affected entity with the county.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions?
I'll just say that the concerns for R3, I guess what we're seeing is we haven't built enough of townhomes. Unfortunately, the cost of homes is reflecting that we don't have enough affordable housing. I personally am not a fan of deed restricted properties. I think the fair route is to just build more supply in a more reasonable size and a more affordable to build size. I think that's probably a further discussion for later, whether we're implementing the state requirements to build affordable housing through these deed restrictions, or by just supplying the demand that is needed. So I'm not opposed to this development as far as the small part that's R3 and the large part that is R15. But going through the plan amendment is probably the best way to do that. Yeah, I think townhomes are a middle ground where you can build affordably, you have shared walls. I don't know. I guess that's it.
Nothing else we can invite. You want anything from the developer on that? Well, let's bring Mr. Hamlin. Do you want to come up and I guess I just got one question for you on, we'll let you come up here and introduce yourself.
Name's Doug Hamblin, 2335 East, 2400 North in Layton.
Thank you, sir. So the question I've got, so I mean, I feel kind of strongly that it's going to come down to how the rest of us feel as well, but would you prefer that we take this, if possible, all as RE15 and then bring back the general plan amendment, or would you be okay if we tabled it to bring back the map amendment for the R3? What's your preference?
I'm all for what you guys feel is best. I mean, it doesn't make a big difference to us. If that's the way you'd like to have it done, then, I'm fine with that. Because eventually we're going to have to do it anyway, even if you do it R115. And
yeah,
we'll have to come through and make, the request to have that changed. If if you feel that that's the best way to go, then, you know, I'm fine with that.
Okay. I appreciate that. Any other questions for the developer?
I think possibly just as a heads up, I don't know if you've seen the recommendations from the planners about connectivity in the area.
Yeah, I have. And
Oh, okay.
we've reviewed it. In fact, I've responded and said all those connectivity points are fine with us.
Okay.
Even the one where they wanted a half road at the very west end of the project. I think they're all good ideas. I mean, I've been in a situation a couple times where I've been landlocked by developers. And I've always taken the stand that I don't want to do that to somebody. So if the county sees somewhere that I need to stub into adjacent property, you know, by all means, I'm willing to do that. So yes, we're familiar with that drawing, and we've already sent it over to our engineer to look at it and to make some changes as well.
Yeah, just so, yeah, as long as you're aware that we probably, to approve something like this, we would want to see those connections that you saw, and also parking associated with the parks would be something else.
Yeah,
important.
and we're aware of that. We didn't put the parking in the park area. We'd probably want to meet with the parks people again and maybe have them, I'm sure there's some type of a scale of how much parking that we need to, you know, include. But we did, as you remember, looking at that drawing back in the work session a couple weeks ago, we eliminated quite a few homes on that south end. And that's to accommodate for the parking as well as opening up a little bit more for access. If we need to eliminate some more homes on that east side, you know, I'm not objected to doing that. We do need to have some adequate parking in there. We would definitely not require parking out on the road. We wouldn't want to even have that as an option.
Wonderful. Those are my thoughts.
Anything else, commissioners? Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, discussion. I think, I mean, I mentioned my thoughts on kind of what we should do and I think developers okay with tabling it and bring it back with that general plan map amendment. What's you guys' thoughts?
I think that's the best route.
Okay. If no further discussion, I'll accept a motion for this item. I think we just table it for our next meeting. I know we had a meeting originally on our calendar scheduled for next week, but that's been canceled, correct? So our next meeting will be in February. And
Would it be wise to go to the following meeting if we want to allow for a proposal to amend the general plan and have a meeting on that and then bring this back to the one after that? So we're not voting on essentially the same thing at the same time?
I think a lot of times we do it that way, that we'll do a map amendment and then the next.
And just be on the agenda first, right? Obviously.
Yep. So, but I mean, whatever you guys feel comfortable with, if
I
staff
just want to allow
feels,
them enough time to make their proposals for.
if staff feels comfortable, they can get this pulled off and noticed in time for our February meeting. Can we meet that? Okay.
That'd be February 13th.
Oh, I was hoping it was Valentine's Day. Give me an excuse out of a date. Oh, it was last year. We had it on Valentine's. Yeah.
In the motion, would we want to include just tabling this item, but also something that's about amending the general plan?
That would be nice if you give us direction on why you're tabling and what you would like to see.
The R3 general plan map amendment notification.
So that we can notify and vote for, okay.
Before we make the motion, can I make a statement? I feel like we're just kind of pushing to amend the general plan. I feel like it should be a thoughtful process. There's a reason why we have that general plan and we put it out the way that we did. I don't want it to be we're making considerations just on one proposal. We need to look at the area. I kindly disagree with Commissioner Wickerns, what she knows, with her statement as far as the townhomes. I think that We don't just say, yeah, any property, do anything. Our general plan's there for a reason. We should be looking at that. This area, I agree with the resident, has a lot of townhomes already, has a lot of high density areas. We need more high density. We need more affordable. Let me clarify. We need more affordable housing. I'm not going to say high density. We need to look at ways to bring that in. I don't know that we need to say that we pack it all into another. This is a very congested area with this already, with the affordable housing, high density type stuff. So I'm just asking that we take that into consideration when we look at this amendment that comes through for the general plan. There is a reason why. And I don't want to say that the general plan is set in stone either. I like it being a fluid document for a lot of reasons, but just take that into consideration when it comes through.
And I appreciate your comments, because that's why I want it to come through in that process. You know, we have a due process of how these are done, and so it is individually looked at,
right?
You know, for the zone that it's potentially, or you know, for what they're requesting for the area, both for, you know, the public and for the landowner. You know, they both have, you know, rights into this process. So, okay.
Isn't this the second one though? On the same thing, didn't we do some R3 before?
I think that's what the corner was up on.
I guess what my point is if we keep running into these things, it's much better to change the plan. And I think that if this is the second one, maybe we should have a good hard look at that, because I believe we're going to have some more. So
along 3,300.
Yeah. So that's my 2 bits.
In the map, I mean, like Felix showed, the other side of the canal from this property is in that, you know, higher density type area. So it's not like this is creating an island, but I agree. I mean, we need to look at it, you know, across the board, because I think most of these developments that have come in, you know, whether it's third acre average across it, in some way or another, several of these have had townhomes that's come to the table on these. And so, yeah, I appreciate the comments. Ready for the motion if you're ready.
Hope so. I motion that we table item ZMA 2023-08, a public hearing for consideration on a request to rezone 72.75 acre property from A2 to R115 and R3 on the property known as Navy Meadows. Acknowledging that we've already had the public hearing for this application, but we'll table until February, when we can also notify and vote on an R3 general plan amendment for this area.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I get a second? Second. All right, Commissioner Clontz. Oh, yeah.
Making this out.
Well, we're
Just-
notifying and voting.
They'll notify the public again.
Okay.
Not notifying with the change, notifying that
Right.
Just send out notification for the map amendment.
Yeah, that makes more sense. It just,
Going through
I
the
was
map
interpreting
amendment
that as that
process.
we were making a motion to where this will fit the general plan in your last statement.
It's just giving direction for staff. I mean, the motion is to table,
Okay.
but giving staff direction to, you know,
Okay. Thanks.
run through that process for the map amendment if that's what they want to keep that R3 in there. Okay, Commissioner Clontz.
Aye.
Commissioner Novell.
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern.
Aye.
Commissioner Favero.
Aye.
Commissioner Andriotti.
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. The item is tabled till our February meeting. Okay, next item is going to be 4.3 ZTA 2023. Well, don't everybody leave. This is just when the meeting gets fun. We get to talk about street trees. Bill, you scared everybody away. They're moving even
Oh,
faster.
holy Will.
They're moving even faster. We do appreciate the public's coming and the input on these, and we hope to see you again when that comes through on that map amendment. So,
Holy smokes.
so this is going to be a public hearing to discuss and possibly take action to amend the Weber County Land Use Code 106-4-2.080 street trees, modifying the requirement for street trees in public right-of-ways and creating new requirements for their maintenance and removal of trees on county-owned property. Mr. Bill. my phone went off telling me that there was a snow squall warning. So I'm grateful that we're taking the time so the trucks all get out, salt the roads. By the time we're out of here, it'll all be clear.
Trucks get out and take out all the street trees.
There you go. Put all the salt on. No. Okay. We've got a list of street trees that are salt tolerant. I just wanted to read the code section that addresses street trees right now. It says, street trees shall be planted by the applicant when so required by the Planning Commission and of a variety and location as approved by the Planning Commission. That's all we've got. One of the things that I've come to know in my career is that developers crave more than anything in their process. They crave predictability. And this is not predictable. This is at the whim and at the measure of what the Planning Commission feels like. Tonight, you guys may feel like 1 tree per acre. In a month, you guys could be like 20 trees is what we want. So we want to help eliminate that unpredictability and give developers a little bit more guidance as to what we hope to see in our public right-of-ways. Right? Is it right-of-ways or rights-of-way?
Parkway.
I usually say rights of way.
Rights-of-way? Okay.
I think right of way, but I have no idea what's right.
It's right. What's rights?
Okay.
Put them both.
ROW.
ROW. It works a lot easier.
There you
No
go.
questions.
So we've looked at this. You've had a chance to look it over. We brought it before you in October. You've had ample time to review and think about this. So hopefully there are, if you have any questions, please let me know. The street tree list that is printed in front of you, and I gave you a big one so you can see it. That's really for your reference. This is going to be something that's adopted by resolution by the county commission. It's referenced in our code section as such. So it's not included in the text of the ordinance for obvious reasons. The main one being that if there comes a time when we want to revise the street trees listed, either adding in or taking out, that can be done by resolution without having to go through the whole process of revising the code. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is on page 6, under subsection B3, 1064-2080, B4 is a section that was added more recently regarding irrigation required. And what this does is say that irrigation shall be provided in a manner that will be approved by the planning director. So any irrigation systems that come forward to help keep these trees alive will be approved by the planning director.
Rick gets to go water them?
He does.
Other duties as
He does.
assigned.
That would probably be his favorite day working for the county, is going out to watering trees. Knowing him the way I do, I think that sounds like something he would thoroughly enjoy. Anyway, we went back and forth about, should we require specific systems? Should we require batteries? And how do we hook that up? We just pushed that off on to the developer and said, you guys tell us what's going to work best in this location. The developers will have the responsibility per this ordinance for maintaining the trees until the adjacent property sells. So if that adjacent property is always owned by the developer will always have responsibility for those trees adjacent to that property. If and when the time comes that they sell, then that obviously reverts to the new owners. So that's pretty much it. So just one question. This is only trees. This isn't where you're trying to sneak in and take all the powers from the planning commission away on subdivision approval, right?
It's
I've
bushes
learned my
and
lesson
stuff,
last
too.
time. I'm not saying anything. No, of course not. Trying to No. sneak that in on us last time, Bill.
But I thought I did see that it was all, it's all the landscaping in the park strip.
Correct.
And it has to be approved, all of it.
Correct. Yeah. No, I think this is all a good thing. So even though we're not sneaking in the other part.
No
about
one's
taking our
sneaking
powers.
anything. I made it very clear.
To your credit, you did bring it out because I completely read over it and you made it clear. So I'm glad you caught it me.
My problem is that my items are always at the end. And so in the work sessions, there's never any time for me to tell you things. And so you think I'm sneaking them in. I promise I'm not.
Well, you let Charlie take up all your time. So We just got to change the agenda so Charlie's not ahead of you on the agenda.
I'm glad to do so. Don't take up all the time.
No, Sean, we're glad you're here, and we do really appreciate these guys. You do have an awesome planning staff. So, all right. Well, since this is a public hearing, and we got to go through the process, I'll entertain a motion to open a public hearing.
Motion.
Got a motion? Do I got a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we're now in a public hearing.
Okay, Sean.
Seeing no comments, I will accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
A motion, do we got a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're now at a public hearing. Discussion.
Bill, I just want to say after we had our first discussion and I was not very happy about the trees, I really thought about it. And then I went to the ugliest place in the world in West Haven. And
We're glad the West Haven people just left.
I knew you were outside my door.
well, solid stucco is one thing. Solid stucco with no windows and no trees is painful, painful to see. And no corner lots. I can show you the pictures. I took pictures of this whole development because it was so scary. Not a window, like corner lot. It looks like the new scene of like a future scene of a horror film, but not a single tree, not a window, full walls of stucco, but the trees could have helped. The trees really could have helped. So I realized if we're going to create beautiful communities, then we probably do need to do the trees. Whether they will be enforced or not, I have a large question on that. My only request is that there is no fee for the tree permits. I don't think we can require people to removal of dead trees, etc., and make them pay a fee to get a permit to take care of the tree. So that is my request, that it is a feeless permit to change your, what's that called, park strip.
We do.
Get the fee somewhere else.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We're requiring it. I don't think there needs to be a
Yeah,
fee with it. So is there a consensus that we ask that that be pulled out of the?
It doesn't say there's a fee in here at all, but
Oh.
I just want to clarify, because I know permits generally require fees, and I would just maybe like to see no fee permits, so maybe add where it says permit to remove trees or vegetation from county property. No fee permit to remove trees.
Well-
And also removal and replacement of dead and or hazardous. It doesn't say, it's the permit is tied to everything above it, so it's just D that would need that clarification.
And I think just to help reiterate that, I think, when we make the motion on this, just put that in as a condition, just so it gets passed through to county commission that we felt, because we're just recommending this to the county commission that we would like to see this move through without a fee. So I think that would be a good condition to list. Okay. Any further discussion? If not, I'll accept a motion on this item.
I'll make that motion.
Perfect.
I can find where we are. I recommend that I move that we recommend approval of file number ZTA 2023-06. I do so with the following findings. The proposal is supported by the general plan. The proposal will support beautification efforts in the Weber County area. And and just one recommendation that we'd like to forward on to the county commission is that they stipulate that any permits involved for removal or, it would be any permit to remove trees or vegetation from the county property is a feeless permit. That is it.
Okay, I got a motion. Do I got any discussion? Do I got a second?
I second it.
Got a motion and a second. Commissioner Clontz.
Hello.
You said Clontz.
Oh,
Yeah, I went the other way first. Sorry. I threw you off. Commissioner Clance.
Nay.
Commissioner Neville.
Nay.
Commissioner Wickard.
Aye.
Commissioner Favero.
Aye.
Commissioner Andriotti.
wake me up. Aye.
Commissioner McCormick. Chair votes aye as well. That passes at the 5-2. Okay. Next item, public comments for items not on our agenda. Seeing no public, remarks from planning commissioners.
I have a couple.
Yes, sir,
and
Mr.
I'll keep
Andriotti.
them short. A couple of things. My wife and I's been kind of scoping out Weber County for a retirement house. And I hate to say, but in the county proper, I haven't run into anything yet that really cranks me over. There's one development in Plain City. There's one over by Dallas Greens, by the way, that has some possibilities. So I'd like to see a little work done, but I'm going to expand my moving range to maybe 6,000 miles. I don't know. But the other thing that struck me, and we talked about this a little bit tonight about affordable housing, and I picked up this factoid on the internet. Of course, we got to believe it, right? It's always true. Just ask 80% of the people. But anyway, said here that the average home in Utah, this is Utah, 115,000 and change, or 515,000 and change. The average annual income in Utah is 74,000 and change. To buy that house at 115, you got to make 107,000 and change.
Two people work.
Two people work 2 jobs each. So I think that it's an undaunting future ahead of us, because I've been in a lot of big cities. And these apartment buildings we're building in Ogden and West Haven, I'm kind of okay with them, but have you ever seen the projects in the cities? That could be our future. The only reason they're not as big is we don't have as many people. So I think that we got to figure out a way, whether it ever happens or not. But for me to feel better, I would like to have a way in how we do our business that on paper addresses this issue. Because we've got to have the developers involved in this, and maybe they could do that if it's a collaborative idea between them and us and whoever. But I really think that we need to have a look at this in all seriousness. It's more important than trees. But I think that...
Do you say that in front of Bill?
Hey, I love trees, but out where I live out, Roundup floats over, and that tree dies a slow, agonizing death. So I don't have any trees. When I get them, I cut them down because I know what's going to happen. I'm too lazy to cut weeds. But anyway, I think that's my 2 bits for tonight. And because it's a new year, I want to voice my appreciation to the people that serve up here, because I think it takes people that has a fairly decent idea of the future. And the thing I like about this particular group is it's a, how do I say this in a nice way? It's a lot. We can have 7 different ideas, and I haven't set up here at a time when the result hasn't been better because of that. And so I would just keep talking, bringing up ideas, because even though they might go what at first, just like the trees, make a little trip over, right? Because that's how we get good products. And I think we can get a good product on this thing, on how we approach affordable housing in Weber County. And so in my mind, I think that's something we need to do on the gauntlet. And if anybody's working on TDRs, I've got Wayne's ideas here. I can't even read them today. But anyway, I think that's something else that might be in the future. So that's it. And thank you for being my comrades.
No, I appreciate those comments, Wayne. That I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think we've had several different discussions on this, but I mean, over the 6 years that I've sat up here, this is the best group we've ever had up here. Like you say, the ideas, we always come out with something good. You know, we a lot of times have a difference of opinion, but that's a good thing because it might intrigue something that one of us hadn't seen. So I really appreciate that. And to your comments on affordable housing, I didn't realize the prices of what things were. My parents just moved back from Nebraska and have been looking at homes, and when my dad told me a 1 acre lot out here in unincorporated county, no sewer, no none of that stuff to it, so basically a culinary water connection and a secondary water connection, $259,000 for a piece of dirt, 1 acre lot, no sewer.
Patio home lots are 165.
Yep. Look at those.
Yep. And what they finally settled on was a house in Hooper, not a huge house, but over $800,000 on a half acre lot. Like, it's just, that scares me for the future. So
Well, we'll just have to grow because it's not going backwards.
and that's
Gotta build
that's
more
the scary part of
places.
this is that we're not building new dirt and we're not getting any new water.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
But you know, through the 70s, in the 80s, interest peaked at 22, which was above our usury laws. And people sold their houses for 14% interest on contracts that sell. But at that same time, they were unaffordable for your average, and even below your average or above your average. It's just the only reason we keep going is because we have a good family network. They don't deal out.
okay.
I have a comment.
Oh, sorry.
This is for Charlie. And I know in all the cities where I've had to build a fence, it really makes for good neighbors. And I've talked about this before, but we never seem to get that in our ordinance.
Help me understand. Fence building?
You know, for neighboring properties.
We do have an ordinance regarding fencing around canals and open ditches, and I think we might have an ordinance that says we can require a subdivision to be fenced.
Agricultural. And I think we ought to have a general one in there.
Yeah.
It just makes for, it actually, I hated it because I had to pay out the dough. But it makes for a lot better subdivision and a better neighborhood.
Yeah, agreed.
I want to say like about 4 years ago, didn't we put this in the code? About the fencing around the developments to neighboring properties?
I thought we did, but I'm going to go back in and check just to make sure.
I think it was for ag, if I remember right, but maybe not.
Required next to, the ditches, the waterways, and agricultural properties.
But I'll look into it just to verify. And if not, we can certainly put it on our list of things to do.
Meeting doesn't need to be any longer then.
I got one more thing I'd like to add. It's been brought to my attention from some people out west that are looking to put up an onion shed or a produce facility. And currently in our code, it's only allowed in the A1 zone. It's not allowed in A2 or anywhere else. So it kind of, I think it's odd that we have a produce shed that you can build. Yeah, it's kind of a little backwards. So just a recommendation for staff to take to the commission that we look at that ordinance. Well, a while ago, remember the big land use tables, and we went through all that. Well, we've never finished it. But this one in particular, and it's, they're working with some onion companies with some changes coming, and as ag changes in our community, there still is ag. This year ag took a big hit. Weber County used to have two of the largest dairies around, and they both went out within a month of each other this fall. The county lost, cows in production, almost 5,000 head of milk cows in production in the county. I mean, that's a huge hit to agriculture, not just for those farmers that had those dairies, but a lot of other farmers that raised and produced crops that sold to those dairies to feed those animals. And so now, as things shift and we're seeing more and more onions produced in our area. We have a really good climate and real good soils for onion production. But as growth comes, the onion wholesaler, I guess you would call in Syracuse, if you ever drove down 108 there past Syracuse High, there's that onion facility right there that used to be by itself and now it's getting encroached on. And they're moving. They've got to be out of there by 2025. And so they're looking to move the facility into Weber County and help support, a lot of these farms that, one of them large dairies that went out have shifted in and they're growing onions now. So I think it would be in the county's best interest to keep somewhat of the ag alive. And I get a lot of it's going away, but if we could get that put, if the commissioners support it and get it put on an agenda to try and getting that straightened around with some conditions. So
Okay, we'll run it up the flagpole.
Thank you. And I don't know, Charlie, if you're going to mention it, but did everyone see the June sent out the invite for our appreciation on the 21st, 22nd at Jeremiah's at 6? So if you're going, let June or Ann know that. So,
We need to know by the first of the month. The facility requires us to kind of let them know how many and what food choices you want. So you still have a week or two, but we'd love to see everybody there.
What's the date again?
Thursday, February 22nd.
Can we RSV right now? Or do you need like meals? Is that
The options are beef medallions and chicken cordon bleu, and you're welcome to just send me an email.
okay? We'll do that. Thanks.
okay. Charlie, you got anything for us?
That
I stole your thunder. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Has Rick mentioned to you guys the Planning Association conference this year, the national conference? Has he said anything? Okay, so it's somebody's turn. I don't know whose turn it is, so I'll let Rick decide who that is and let you guys know. But just to keep your eyes on April 13th through the 16th.
It's in Milwaukee this year, right?
Uh-huh. It's in Minneapolis.
Or Minneapolis, that's right.
Minneapolis. So that'll be at that time. I had one other thing.
While Charlie's thinking, I went to the one last year. It was a very, very good experience to go to a national conference and see a lot of the stuff that's going on at the national level. They kind of throw some weird names into some of their courses that, you go thinking it's going to be a good one and it's totally what you don't think it is, but it was a great experience. I sat through a lot of good sessions and I'd throw a plug in there I didn't do it, but just a recommendation. If you get on early when if you're going, look at some of their tours they have. I know some of these guys, Sean, and some of these other guys went on some of the cool tours that show some of the innovative planning and stuff they've done in those areas. So I'd throw a plug in for that as well. So.
Two other things I just remembered. So one, I don't know if you've heard, but we do have a rezone application for that could include up to 14,000 dwelling units. So at 1,000, I did mean 1,000, not 100. 14,000 dwelling units at build out, but it'll take quite a bit of time for them to get there. Meeting with that landowner. So first off, that project is up on Frontier. If you guys want to start, browsing through, it's actually a really good submittal. You probably won't fall asleep reading it. It's I don't know, maybe 15 pages long or something like that, but very well put together, very professionally done. And it's nice to see those kind of submittals. It's called Westbrook Meadows rezone on Frontier. They were going to call it Salt Creek. I think they realized that Salt Creek 1, 2, 3, and 4 don't run through that area. so maybe they changed it. Or sorry, not Westbrook, Westbridge Meadows.
Where's that at?
It's on the west side of the river and south of the track. So it's that big area that Flagship Homes has been talking about developing for a while, and Pat Burns and all those folks. So that application has been submitted. You guys will see it at some point in time, and they put together a really good application. So it may be quicker than we think it is.
It really follows. Well, they're kind of putting a bridge to their west over the river. So,
it's very logical.
I mean,
makes a lot of sense.
But these guys were the ones that come in and sat through a lot of our general plan meetings. And I looked through this proposal and it really fits with what we kind of spelled out in that area of the general plan. It was quite a shock to see, 14,000 units and a potential population growth of 42,000. That's like almost doubling the size of Ogden population in this
I'm
area.
gonna live long enough.
So
Not on that one. None of us here will.
that's right.
It's a lot.
Yep, that's absolutely right. So we're not going to know how fast this place is going to grow until they start. But if it's anything like Riverdale City had 900 residents in 1997. 2007, they had like 21,000. And so over a 10-year period of time, they grew pretty fast. It was a good thing they had a pretty good master plan put together to guide that growth. And I think we're not too far behind that. So keep your eye out on that if you want to do a little bit of research and reading before it comes to you. The other thing is, I don't know if Rick's mentioned it, but we're going to be running a little bit lean in the planning department for the next few months, if not longer. So we've lost Steve, and there'll probably be some others who decide to retire or whatnot. And so we'll be short-staffed for a little bit. And the reason I bring it up is as new ideas for ordinances come up, one of the things that Rick has been committed to over the next year or so is to try and not bite off as much as we have in the past and just kind of keep it lean. I will make sure he talks about subdivision fencing if we don't already have that in the ordinance, as well as adding produce storage and packing to A2 and A3 zones with the commission, see if they want to pursue that. If they don't, it doesn't mean that it's not the end of the conversation. It just means that maybe we wait a year just to see what happens. Really, ultimately, the year is because we're not sure whether or not the Ogden Valley is going to incorporate. And if they do, it may be good that we've got less staff. We may not have to riff anyone at that time if it ever came to it. So we'll find out.
We cross our fingers.
Yeah.
Bill, don't be one of those that's leaving. It's all jokes. I promise it. We really like you. Okay.
Well, technically, the way the HR guide is currently written, at least last I checked, is last one in is the first one riffed. So it might be Bill.
Oh, he thought you were gone.
Nah, we'll keep you. Well, like I told Sean earlier, we've got a great planning department. And
Yep.
it's unfortunate that we got to run lead and Steve decided to go play with Ogden City instead of us, but he is.
He came back to the office early today.
Thanks, Charlie. Liam?
Would actually like to make a comment.
It's
Believe it or not.
finally. I've been waiting for like 3 years to get
The
you
new
to make
year,
a comment.
my resolution was to make at least one legal remark. But I would just like to remark and thank you all, as well as planning staff, for continued professionalism in spite of unprofessional attacks and accusations, which occurred last year and they will occur this year as well. It makes my job easier, makes the whole attorney's office job easier, but that's not the important part. The important part is your professionalism in the public sphere reflects very well on the county, and that's the important part of it. So thank you all, and to Charlie and staff and Sean as well. I really do appreciate it, and it really does make a difference. So thank you.
Thanks, Liam. Okay, last item. It's going to be voting on a new chair and vice chair for 2024. I've appreciated my term and to serve.
Let's leave it the same.
I didn't even get my speech out. All right. We'll run through.
You interrupted his speech.
I know.
Maybe I was saying I don't want to do it anymore. No, I've really appreciated the role, and sometimes the chair sucks because you can't make them motions. But I think
That's
the
where we need
group's
you, Brand.
done very well, and so with that being said, yeah, I would like to stay in my position. I think Commissioner Favero would like to as well, as vice chair. So procedurally, I think we have to vote on it. So nominations and vote. So we'll do chair first. Open it up to nominations for chair.
Brand Edwards.
I have any further nominations? Do I have to do the whole parliamentary 3 nominations and cease the nominations, or just make them move to acclimate? What's the
Yeah,
process,
Just have
Leo?
somebody second that, and then you guys can vote.
I'll
if
second
that's
that,
good.
that
Okay.
Bren can be our chair again.
I think we need to make sure that Cammie's not interested in that position first.
Absolutely not.
I called and asked, and I was told if we put her in the chair, she's quitting. And we don't want to lose Cammie off the commission, so let's not do that.
This is my last
I
time.
just didn't want to take away any opportunity you might have. Sorry.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. All those in favor of putting myself back in his chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Now we'll move on to vice chair.
I nominate
choice.
Andrew Favero.
I got
I second that.
a nomination and a second. All those in favor of Andrew as our vice chair for
We
2024?
should do a roll call on this one. Better make sure.
Aye.
everybody stays.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, that's in as well. So like I said, I appreciate you guys and appreciate the
Honestly, both of you have done a great job. You're very good at communicating with us, letting us know what's going on. I appreciate you both a lot. I appreciate your patience with me specifically. I remind myself of my first car, a 1983 Ford Ranger, and you had to crank on the key about 5 times and stomp on the gas pedal over and over to get it going. But once we got going, we're finally there. So I appreciate your patience with me and treating me like that, helping me get through there.
All right, thanks, you guys. That will conclude our meeting. So motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.